My name is Holden Merrick. I'm 32 years old and I live in Austin, Texas. For the past 6 years, I've worked as a freelance data analyst, specializing in predictive modeling and behavioral algorithms. It's not the kind of work that gets you noticed at parties. No flashy office, no corporate title on a business card. Just me, my laptop, and data sets that most people would find mind-numbingly boring. But I've always been fine with that. I never needed the spotlight to feel valuable. I've always lived simply. Independent coffee shops instead of upscale bistros. Basic clothing, comfortable, no labels screaming for attention. I drive a 2018 Honda Civic that runs perfectly fine. My apartment is clean, functional, nothing extravagant. Some people might call that boring. I call it intentional. My worth isn't in what I wear or where I'm seen. It's in what I build, what I create, what I solve. For 8 months, I dated Reese Callahan. She's 30, works as an image consultant for executives and influencers. When we first met at a networking event downtown in late 2024, she said she found my calm demeanor refreshing. She liked that I didn't try to impress anyone, that I listened more than I talked. She said it was rare to meet someone genuinely smart who didn't feel the need to prove it constantly. I believed her. I thought we connected on something real. But over time, things shifted. The compliments became critiques. Subtle at first. She'd suggest I update my wardrobe, maybe try something more tailored. She'd ask why I wasn't more active on social media, why I didn't post about my work or share updates about my life. She started dropping hints that I should meet more people, expand my network, attend events with the right crowd. I brushed it off initially. I figured she was just being helpful, trying to push me out of my comfort zone. Then the comments became less subtle. She'd compare me to her colleagues' partners, people with polished LinkedIn profiles and designer watches. She'd sigh when I suggested a quiet dinner at home instead of a trendy restaurant. She started saying things like, "You're so smart, Holden, but you just don't know how to show it." As if intelligence needed a performance to be valid. The breaking point came during a dinner with some of her work friends at an upscale steakhouse in downtown Austin in early March of 2025. I was sitting there, quietly eating my meal, listening to them talk about brand partnerships and Instagram engagement rates. I wasn't contributing much. It wasn't my world, and I didn't pretend otherwise. Then Reese, mid-conversation and half laughing, said something I'll never forget. She looked at her friends and said, "Some people are genuinely brilliant, but they're just not made to shine, you know?" Everyone laughed. Light, casual laughter, like it was a harmless observation. But I caught the glance she threw my way. The message was clear. She was talking about me. I didn't react. I just kept eating, kept my expression neutral. Inside, though, something clicked. I understood exactly what she thought of me. And I understood that this relationship had an expiration date. The irony was almost funny. She had no idea that in my laptop bag, sitting under the table, I had draft partnership agreements from a Silicon Valley startup. But that wasn't something worth mentioning anymore. If you enjoy stories of cold-blooded revenge and gripping plot twists, like this video and subscribe to the channel now. There are brand new, unreleased stories here every day, each one more intense than the last. 2 days after that dinner, Reese came to my apartment. She sat down on my couch, looked at me with this practiced expression of gentle regret, and said we needed to talk. I already knew what was coming. She told me I was too good for an ordinary life, that I deserved someone who matched my intellect, but didn't have the same ambitions she did. She said she needed someone with presence, someone who wanted to be seen, someone who could keep up with the lifestyle she was building. She made it sound like a compliment, like she was setting me free to find my own path. But the subtext was obvious. I wasn't enough. Not for her stage, not for the image she wanted to project. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just nodded, told her I understood and wished her well. She seemed almost surprised by how easily I accepted it. Maybe she expected me to beg, to promise I'd change. But I didn't. I let her walk out believing she'd made the right choice, that she'd won something. What Reese didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that while she was busy evaluating whether I fit her aesthetic, I was in the middle of something that would change everything. Back in late November of 2024, about 3 months before that dinner, I published a technical article on LinkedIn. It wasn't meant to be anything special, just a deep dive into decision-making patterns in chaotic environments, with applications in cybersecurity and fraud detection. I wrote it on a Sunday afternoon, posted it without much thought, and went back to my regular work. Within 48 hours, that article had over 15,000 views. Comments started pouring in from data scientists, security analysts, CTOs at mid-sized tech companies. Someone from MIT shared it, then someone from Stanford. It kept growing. My inbox filled up with messages from people I'd never met, asking questions, proposing collaborations, offering consulting gigs. One message stood out. It came from a guy named Nathan Voss, co-founder of a small AI startup called Apex Neural, based in San Francisco. He said they'd been working on a predictive security platform but kept hitting walls with their algorithmic architecture. He'd read my article twice, showed it to his team, and they all agreed I was describing solutions to problems they'd been struggling with for months. He asked if I'd be open to a conversation. I took the call. We talked for 2 hours. Nathan and his co-founder, a woman named Priya Mehta, had solid funding, a clear vision. But they needed someone who could build the kind of models I specialized in. They weren't looking for a consultant. They wanted a partner. Someone who could architect the core system, someone who understood not just the math, but the philosophy behind predictive behavior analysis. They offered me a minority stake in the company and the title of Chief Algorithm Architect. The equity alone, if the company performed even moderately well, would be worth more than I'd made in the past 3 years combined. But it wasn't about the money, not entirely. It was about finally working on something that mattered, something that could scale, something that would be seen by the people who actually understood its value. The core innovation was a hybrid model combining unsupervised learning with behavioral pattern recognition. Instead of just flagging suspicious transactions after they happened, our system could predict fraud attempts before they materialized by identifying subtle shifts in user behavior patterns. It was the kind of preventative approach the industry had been chasing for years but couldn't quite crack. I knew we had something special. I didn't tell Reese, not because I was hiding it, but because it wasn't finalized yet. And honestly, by that point, I'd started to notice how she reacted whenever I talked about my work. Her eyes would glaze over, she'd nod politely, then change the subject to something she found more interesting. So I stopped bringing it up. I kept the negotiations quiet, worked on the preliminary models in my spare time, and let her keep believing I was just another freelancer spinning his wheels in obscurity. The contract was signed 1 week after she broke up with me, in mid-March of 2025. I became a partner at Apex Neural, and I immediately started building out the architecture they needed. The work was intense, 14-hour days, endless testing, constant iteration. But it was the kind of challenge I'd been waiting for my entire career. Priya and Nathan trusted my vision completely. They gave me full autonomy over the technical side, and I delivered. Within 6 weeks, by late April, we had a working prototype. Within 8 weeks, by mid-May, we had a beta version that outperformed every competitor in our testing environments. Nathan started pitching it to potential clients. The responses were overwhelming. A mid-sized fintech company in New York signed on as our first major client, paying $250,000 for a 1-year license. Then a healthcare data firm in Boston. Then a logistics company in Seattle. 2 months after I joined, in mid-May of 2025, we got the call that changed everything. A VP at one of the big 5 tech companies had heard about our platform through a mutual connection. They wanted a demo. We flew out to their headquarters in Silicon Valley, set up the presentation, and walked them through what our system could do. They didn't just like it. They wanted to license the entire underlying model for their own security infrastructure. The deal was worth $8 million. Apex Neural's valuation tripled overnight. Suddenly, we weren't just another startup. We were a legitimate player, and I was the person who built the thing they were buying. I still dressed the same, still drank coffee at the same independent shop near my apartment, still drove my Honda Civic. Nothing about my lifestyle changed, but everything about my professional reality had shifted. I was getting emails from venture capital firms, requests for interviews, invitations to speak at conferences. I turned most of them down. I've never been interested in fame, but I couldn't avoid all of it. One request I accepted came from Forbes. They were doing a feature on under-the-radar tech innovators, people who were building significant things without chasing the spotlight. Someone had recommended me. The journalist, a woman named Sarah Mitchell, flew to Austin to interview me in early June of 2025. We met at my usual coffee shop. She asked about my background, my approach to algorithms, my philosophy on work and success. At one point, she asked about my personal life, whether I had family support, a partner who understood the demands of what I was doing. I paused for a moment, then smiled and said, I was with someone who thought my lifestyle was too ordinary for her world. She was right, in a way, but not the way she thought. Sometimes what looks ordinary is just someone who hasn't been seen with the right eyes yet. Sarah wrote that down word for word. She didn't push for details, but I could tell she understood there was a story there. The article came out 3 weeks later in late June of 2025. The headline read, The Quiet Mind Behind Silicon Valley's Newest Gold Rush. And on the cover of the digital edition was a photo of me, white shirt, gray blazer, sitting in that same coffee shop. No flash, no gimmicks. Just me, exactly as I'd always been. The article went viral. It was shared across LinkedIn, Twitter, tech blogs, industry newsletters. My inbox exploded. But more importantly, people in my field started recognizing my name. I wasn't just another freelancer anymore. I was someone who'd built something that mattered, and people knew it. Within 48 hours, the article had been shared over 50,000 times. I started getting recognized at coffee shops. Other founders reached out wanting to collaborate. Recruiters from major tech companies sent offers I politely declined. The quiet life I'd built was suddenly very public, but I handled it the same way I handled everything else, on my own terms. I didn't expect Reese to see the article. We hadn't spoken since the breakup, hadn't crossed paths, hadn't even interacted on social media. I'd unfollowed her accounts not out of spite, but simply to move on. But Austin isn't that big of a city, especially in professional circles. And when something goes viral, it reaches everyone eventually. 3 days after the Forbes piece dropped, I got a text from a mutual friend. Just a screenshot of Reese's Instagram story. She'd reposted the article with a vague caption. So proud to see talented people getting the recognition they deserve. No tag, no direct mention of me, but anyone who knew us would understand exactly what she was doing. Trying to associate herself with my success. Trying to imply she'd always believed in me. I didn't respond to the mutual friend. I didn't react at all. I just archived the message and kept working. A week later, in early July of 2025, I was at Apex Neural's temporary office space in downtown Austin. We'd just moved out of Nathan's garage into an actual building. Nothing fancy, just a converted loft with exposed brick and decent Wi-Fi. I was in the middle of debugging a section of code when our receptionist, a young guy named Tyler, knocked on my door and said I had a visitor. No appointment, just someone who'd walked in asking to see me. It was Reese. She stood in the doorway wearing a tailored navy dress, heels, full makeup, hair perfect. The same polished image she always projected. She smiled when she saw me, that practiced, professional smile she used with clients. "Holden," she said warmly, like we were old friends catching up. "I hope I'm not interrupting. I was in the area and thought I'd stop by. I've been wanting to talk to you." I stood up from my desk, kept my expression neutral. "Reese," I said, "this is unexpected." She stepped into my office, glancing around at the whiteboards covered in equations, the monitors displaying lines of code, the stacks of technical papers on my desk. "This is amazing," she said. "I saw the Forbes article. Everyone's talking about it. I'm so happy for you, Holden." "Really?" I nodded. "Thank you." There was a pause. She was waiting for me to say more, to invite her to sit, to engage in small talk. I didn't, I just waited. Finally, she continued. "I've been thinking about us a lot lately," she said, her voice softer now, more personal. "About how things ended. I think maybe we were both going through transitions, you know, and maybe the timing just wasn't right." "Maybe," I said. "I miss our conversations," she continued. "You always had this way of seeing things differently. I didn't always appreciate that enough." She paused, then added, "I think I might have made a mistake, Holden, letting you go." I leaned back against my desk, crossed my arms. I wasn't angry. I wasn't hurt. I was just observing, analyzing, the same way I'd analyze any data set. She was recalibrating, adjusting her assessment based on new information. It made sense from her perspective. The version of me she'd dumped wasn't valuable to her world. But this version, the one on the cover of Forbes, the one people were talking about, suddenly had currency. "What are you saying, Reese?" I asked calmly. She stepped closer. "I'm saying maybe we ended things too quickly. Maybe we didn't give it a real chance. I know you're busy now, but I'd love to grab coffee sometime. Just talk. See if there's still something there." I looked at her for a long moment. I could see the calculation behind her eyes, the same look she probably gave her clients when she was crafting their public image. This wasn't about connection. This wasn't about missing me. This was about proximity to success, about being seen with someone who was suddenly worth being seen with. "Reese," I said finally, "I appreciate you stopping by, but I don't think that's a good idea." Her smile faltered slightly. "Why not? We were good together, Holden. We had something real." "We had something," I agreed. "But it wasn't what you're remembering right now. You were very clear about why it didn't work. You needed someone with presence, someone ambitious, someone who fit into the lifestyle you wanted. And you were right. I wasn't that person for you. But you are now," she said quickly. "You're exactly that person. You've built something incredible. You're being recognized for it. That's what I always knew you were capable of." I shook my head slowly. "No, Reese. I'm the same person I was 4 months ago. Same clothes, same habits, same values. The only thing that changed is that other people can see what I was already doing. But you couldn't see it. You saw me as ordinary, because I didn't perform the way you thought success should look." She opened her mouth to respond, but I continued. "You said some people aren't made to shine. You were talking about me. I heard you. And maybe you were right. Maybe I'm not made to shine in the way you define it. But I don't need to. I'm fine being exactly who I am, doing exactly what I do without needing validation from people who only notice when there's a spotlight involved." Her face flushed slightly. "Holden, I didn't mean it like that." "Yes, you did," I said, not unkindly. "And that's okay. You were honest about what you wanted. I respect that. But what you wanted then and what you want now are two different things, and I'm not interested in being valued only when it's convenient." She stood there for a moment silent. I could see her recalibrating again, realizing this wasn't going the way she'd planned. Finally, she straightened up, put her professional mask back on. "Well," she said, her voice cooler now, "I'm glad you're doing well. I really am." "Thank you," I said. "I hope you find what you're looking for." She nodded, turned, and walked out. Tyler glanced at me as she passed the front desk, his eyebrows raised in a silent question. I just shook my head and went back to my office, back to my work, back to the life I'd built without needing anyone's permission to be exactly who I was. That evening, Nathan and Priya took me out for drinks to celebrate closing another client deal. We went to a low-key bar near the office, nothing fancy. While we were there, Nathan asked if I was okay. He'd seen Reese leave earlier and could tell something had happened. I told him the short version. He laughed and said, "Man, that's cold. She really thought she could just walk back in?" I shrugged. She saw an opportunity, can't blame someone for trying. Priya, always more perceptive, looked at me seriously and said, "You handled that with a lot of grace, Holden. Not everyone would have stayed that calm." "There's nothing to be upset about," I said. "She made a choice based on what she valued. I made a choice based on what I value. We're just in different places. And that was the truth. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was just clear. The months that followed were some of the most productive of my life. Apex Neural kept growing. We brought on 2 more engineers, expanded our client base to include a major insurance company and a national retail chain. The algorithm I'd built was being used to protect millions of transactions every day. And every time I saw the system working, catching fraud patterns that traditional methods missed, I felt something I'd never experienced before. The quiet satisfaction of knowing my work actually mattered at scale. Nathan and Priya started getting offers from venture capital firms wanting to invest. We took meetings, listened to pitches, but we were selective. We didn't want to grow too fast, didn't want to lose control of what we'd built. By September of 2025, we accepted a Series A funding round from a firm in Boston that understood our vision and didn't try to change it. The investment valued Apex Neural at $42 million. My equity stake, which had been theoretical numbers on paper 9 months earlier, was now worth just over $5 million on paper. The cybersecurity AI market was exploding, and we were positioned perfectly at the intersection of fraud prevention and predictive analytics. Investors saw the potential, and more importantly, they saw the traction we already had with major clients. I still lived in the same apartment, still drove the same car, still went to the same coffee shop every morning. People who knew me from before would sometimes do a double take when they recognized me from the Forbes article, but I never played into it. I'd nod, say hello, and go back to my work. Fame was never the goal. Building something real was. One afternoon in late September of 2025, I got an email from the organizers of a tech conference in San Francisco called Data Forward. They wanted me to give a keynote speech about algorithmic ethics and predictive modeling in security applications. It was one of the biggest conferences in the industry, attended by thousands of engineers, data scientists, and executives. I'd been to it twice before as just another attendee in the audience. Now they wanted me on the main stage. I almost declined. Public speaking wasn't my strength, and I didn't enjoy the attention. But Priya convinced me to do it. She said it was important for people to see that you didn't have to be loud or flashy to make an impact in tech. That quiet competence deserved a platform too. So I agreed. The conference was in mid-October of 2025. I flew to San Francisco, checked into a modest hotel near the convention center, and spent the night before my speech reviewing my notes. I wasn't nervous, exactly, just focused. I wanted to deliver something useful, something that would help people understand the responsibility that comes with building systems that make decisions about people's lives. The next morning, I walked onto that stage in front of 3,000 people. I wore a white button-down shirt and a gray blazer, the same outfit from the Forbes photo. No theatrics, no flashy slides, just me and a microphone and 45 minutes to talk about the work I loved. I spoke about the ethics of algorithmic decision-making, about the danger of bias in predictive models, about the importance of transparency and accountability in AI systems. The audience was silent the entire time. Not the bad kind of silence, but the kind where people are actually listening, actually thinking. When I finished, the applause was immediate and genuine. People stood up. I wasn't expecting that. I just nodded, thanked them, and walked off stage. Afterward, dozens of people came up to talk to me. Engineers who wanted advice on their own projects, executives who wanted to discuss potential collaborations, students who said my speech made them reconsider how they thought about their work. I stayed for 2 hours answering questions, exchanging contact information, having the kinds of deep technical conversations I'd always valued. As I was leaving the convention center, I saw her. Reese. She was standing near the exit with a lanyard around her neck, clearly attending the conference in some professional capacity. Our eyes met. She looked surprised, maybe even uncomfortable. I wasn't. I walked over, kept my expression neutral, but not unfriendly. Reese, I said. Holden, she replied. I didn't know you'd be here. Keynote speaker, I said simply. She nodded slowly. I heard. I saw your name in the program. That's really impressive. She paused, then added, I'm here with a client, corporate image consulting for one of the sponsors. Thank you. There was an awkward pause. She looked like she wanted to say something more, but couldn't find the words. Finally, she managed, You were right. About what you said back in Austin. I didn't see what was already there. I only saw what I thought should be there. I appreciated the honesty. We all do that sometimes, I said. We see what we're conditioned to see. Still, she said quietly, I should have known better. I could have twisted the knife there, could have said something cutting, something that would make her feel worse. But that's not who I am. And honestly, she wasn't worth the energy. We're good, Reese, I said. No hard feelings. I hope things are going well for you. She smiled, but it was sad. They are. Different than I expected, but good. I nodded. Take care of yourself. You too, Holden. I walked away. Not out of anger, not out of satisfaction, just out of completion. That chapter was closed. There was nothing left to say, nothing left to prove. She'd made her choice, I'd made mine, and life had simply moved forward the way it was always going to. Earlier this month, in early November of 2025, we received a binding acquisition offer from one of the big 5 tech companies. The offer was for $120 million. The due diligence process is underway, and barring any surprises, the deal should close within the next 60 days. Nathan, Priya, and I are all looking at life-changing money. I've already started looking at houses, found a comfortable 3-bedroom place with a home office and a quiet backyard in a good neighborhood in North Austin. Nothing extravagant, just right for who I am. I kept working, kept building, kept solving problems. The work didn't stop just because the money came. If anything, it got more interesting. People sometimes ask me if I feel vindicated. If seeing Reese realize what she'd given up felt like revenge. But that's not how I think about it. Revenge implies I did something to hurt her, that I changed myself to prove her wrong. I didn't. I just kept being exactly who I'd always been. I kept working on what mattered to me, kept building things I believed in, kept staying true to my values. The vindication, if you can call it that, wasn't about making her regret her decision. It was about knowing that my worth was never dependent on her ability to see it. I didn't need her validation then, and I certainly don't need it now. The world saw what I built because I built something worth seeing, and that happened regardless of whether she was there to witness it or not. Now, as we negotiate the final terms of an acquisition that will fundamentally change my financial reality, I find myself thinking less about the money and more about what comes next. The acquisition offer validates the work, sure, but the real validation came months ago when the first client signed on because our technology solved a problem no one else could solve. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about making someone suffer. It's about growing so completely into who you're meant to be that their opinion becomes irrelevant. It's about building a life so aligned with your values that the people who couldn't see your worth simply fade into the background noise of your success. I'm still the same guy who prefers independent coffee shops to upscale restaurants, who wears simple clothes and drives a reliable car, who values substance over style. The only difference now is that the people who matter, the people doing work that actually changes things, they see me clearly. And that's all I ever needed. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button and leave a comment letting me know what you thought. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss new stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.